Hosting for the Dice Tower is generously provided by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com. Thanks for your support. The Dice Tower, episode 489.
The best of 5 years ago, 2012.
Welcome to the Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, Tom and I kick off 2017 with a tale of betrayal, a look back at some 2016 statistics, and an introduction to our 2017 fundraiser. Plus, we set the dial on the Wayback Machine to 2012 with our top 10 games from 5 years ago. I'm Eric Summerer, and here's your host, the Nick Fury of board gaming, Tom Vassell.
I don't know if I want to be Nick Fury.
You can be. I mean, you pull the whole Avengers team together, really. Plus, the Avengers movie came out in 2012, so it fits thematically.
Wow, it's 5 years old now, huh?
Can you believe it?
Yeah, I can. Because it does seem like it's a while. There's been 2 other Avengers movies made, if you count Captain America.
Sure.
And, I mean, I'm excited. This new Spider-Man trailer, I don't know if you've seen it yet for the new Spider-Man
I haven't seen the new
movie.
Spider-Man yet. There are so many superhero trailers to watch, I guess I haven't kept up to date.
Well, folks, slight spoiler, skip ahead 30 seconds if you skip trailer stuff. But Iron Man is like a big part of the movie.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, at least that's the way the trailer made it out to be. Like, not just a bit character, but like a big part of the movie.
They just showed every scene he's in, and that's it.
Well, maybe. Who knows?
He's in it for 2 minutes, and then that's the whole trailer.
All right, spoilers over. Anyway. Anyhow, so did you like Rogue One? We're going to talk about movies for a minute here, folks. Sorry.
I did enjoy Rogue One. I thought I had some minor quibbles about some of the technical aspects of the film. But I enjoyed it. My 2 kids, I took both kids to see it, and the one who hates Star Wars, really didn't like it. This didn't change his opinion. He faced backwards at one point in the film, and then he took a 20-minute bathroom break. I had to leave and go find him. But the youngest came out of it saying this is the best movie he has ever seen, and was just delighted, and we were singing the theme song to each other in the end credits, and it was a lovely experience, and now he bought a Death Star to play with his Christmas money.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, so I have one convert.
So you've like a rebellious kid, like, I don't want this nerdy stuff, Dad.
Yeah, well, it's not nerdy stuff. It's just specifically Star Wars. I don't know. I don't understand. He said there was too much red in the film. Like every time he looked at the screen, there was red there. That doesn't even make any sense.
Well, my kids also were not. They liked it, but they came back and I was like, "So what'd you think?" Because I sent them with my wife because I had to watch the little kids, and they were like, "Oh yeah." I was kind of a little concerned that might have happened because this is not the most uplifting of movies.
I did get the warning that it was not for children after I had taken my children to see it, because it is much darker. It's more of a war movie it's Star Wars. It really emphasizes the wars.
Yes, it definitely is. I mean, it's not like it's a horrible movie for kids to see, but it has some pretty powerful moments that you might, anyway, it's hard to explain without spoiling the movie, but I was just,
right.
It's just interesting, but I really liked it. The technical things did not bother me like they did with Eric, and I've been arguing with Z about them now like for a couple weeks because I'm pretty sure I know what technical things you're talking about.
Yeah, I just don't want to spoil it.
And I'm kind of in an amazement that we have that sort of thing in existence.
Impressive,
at this point.
yes. Distracting was my main quibble.
Yeah, but now one of those things is more potent thanks to recent events.
Yes, we should probably address that we're recording this, although you're hearing this in 2017. We're recording this in 2016, and there's still a day or two for another beloved celebrity to pass on, and it's getting depressing, because I'm going to miss Carrie Fisher.
Yes, but I don't... Maybe I just lack empathy that everyone else has. I'm not so depressed by this. It's just showing that we're getting older, honestly.
It is. I was really looking forward to seeing what her character was going to do in future films. I've heard that at least some of what she was doing in Episode 8 has been completed. But I don't know how much and how they're going to change the story. I was expecting her to play a big role in the next 2 episodes. And that also bothers me that we're going to miss that aspect of those films, as well as whatever force she was outside of the screen.
I agree on that. I just feel like that might be, it almost feels selfish to think that way, right?
Mm.
Yeah. I don't know. Okay. Well, folks, we're done. We're done with movies. We're back to board games. This is a board game podcast. And this, I believe, is the first board game podcast of 2017.
It is. Happy New Year.
So, yeah. Oh, I'm still alive with all my fireworks shooting off of. Hopefully.
In theory,
hopefully.
Yes. If not, future Eric is going to have a really depressing update.
Nah, there's a couple firemen in my church, and they have insisted that they will be there.
Oh, good.
I was like, don't you trust me? They didn't seem to. But no, okay, all joking aside, folks, I am not a foolish 20-year-old running around shooting stuff off. I love to see things blow up and shoot off, but I'm cautious. I don't let kids anywhere near the stuff. I try to be as safe as you can be with this stuff.
Right.
I like to see it blow up, but at the same time, I like to see it blow up from somewhat of a vantage of a safety point. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So anyhow, folks, it is the new year. Now, because of the way we schedule these podcasts, this podcast is coming out either super late Monday night, which is possible because I might rush this one editing-wise, or it's coming out at its normal time on Tuesday morning. Either way, that means our fundraiser has been already in effect because we launched that at 12 noon on Monday on January 2nd, Eastern Standard Time.
And we
Yes. So probably you should pause this thing and go back that now. You know, if there's something specifically you want, okay.
Are you saying people can't listen and back at the same time?
Well, they can. I don't know. If you're driving a car, I would recommend not doing that.
Yeah, don't do that.
Okay, so we want to talk a little bit about this, and one of the reasons I do a fundraiser event every year, folks, is that I don't want to ask for financial support all year round. I don't like constantly asking for money. In fact, to be frank, I don't like asking for money at all. But I do so because it is what we need to keep this show going at this point. When we first started doing the show, it was certainly as a hobby. But at this point in time, the show has expanded to much more than that. In the year 2016, we did over 2,100 videos.
Wow.
With over 1,000 reviews. But there was all kinds of other videos, top 10 lists and such. And so that's, if you divide that by 365, that's more than 5 videos a day.
Mm-hmm.
And we did just piles of reviews. We did, of this show that you're listening to, we did 50 episodes of it. We may have skipped, maybe we did 51, but
yeah, maybe.
When we have a lot of other podcasts that we put out, we have a website that we keep up with, and we put up our top 10 lists there also. We have the Dice Tower News website. We last year we did some live playthroughs. Eric came down to our house.
That was fun.
We have, over the past year, especially in 2016, we worked really hard at improving our audio as much as we could. And there was certainly a hairy period where the audio was pretty bad for a while, at least on the videos. And it was just a transition period. But I think it's getting much better as time goes by. We definitely worked on expanding our convention coverage. We went to more conventions than we've ever gone before. And at each convention, or not at each, but most of the conventions, we put on shows, multiple shows, big shows. Our Gen Con show was 1,000 people. That was humongous.
We live streamed from the Gamma Trade Show and from Origins, right?
Right. I believe we live streamed. Did we live stream from Gamma last year? No, this was the first year we live streamed from both of them.
It was, yeah.
We've done things at them in the past. So we live streamed from both of those, which takes a lot of work. That was a full-time job. We had to bring in extra people to help us for all those days. We added a full-time video editor this year, Derek Porter. And so the Dice Tower currently has 4 full-time employees. Myself, Derek, who I just mentioned, Sam Healy, and Z Garcia. We have 3 part-time employees. We have Eric Summer, who's the other.
Hey, that's me.
Yes. We have Rob Searing, who's our webmaster, and Chaz Marler. And so we've really worked hard at, trying to improve the show. But right now, in 2016, we got 29 million views. That apparently is 492 years worth of people watching our videos.
If you put them all together.
Which actually saddens me a bit. That seems like a lot of years that people have wasted on watching about board games. But even our show itself, I couldn't get the exact numbers of downloads, but I believe we've broken 10 million downloads this year. And our last show here, that we just 2 shows ago, we broke 70,000, which was pretty exciting.
Whoa! Hi, everybody.
Right, so we're really glad that you're listening. So on the audio podcast, because we're talking about the video, because it's all one big thing. I know that some people who listen to the audio podcast, you don't care about the video, although you could. You could go to Dice Tower Audio and listen to a lot of the video podcasts redone in an audio format.
Neat.
But for those who are listening to the audio, one of the things that we started this whole fundraiser to do was that we wouldn't have advertisements on this podcast. Now, I won't lie, part of that's good for us. We kind of like not doing advertisements. We don't have to worry about setting up ads on each show and figuring out who's sponsoring what show and making sure we try to say something good about a publisher and yet we hate their newest game or whatever. We don't have to worry. It gives us a lot of freedom. It did
remove the situation where we were promoting something we hadn't played yet and that we couldn't necessarily speak ill of while the campaign was going on and then would have to do a review a ways down the line. It made some messy situations and made it hard to be impartial. And so this is much better, and it has been for several years. We can be a much more impartial organization in reviewing games.
Now, to be clear, we are sponsored by Cool Stuff Games, and that sponsorship basically involves Cool Stuff helping us ship all the rewards for our fundraiser, because the shipping costs for the fundraiser are quite exorbitant, and so that's a very helpful thing. What are we going to do differently in 2017? Well, the biggest thing we're going to do in 2017 is hopefully maintain the quality and improve the quality. I don't know that we can do much more in quantity, right?
Yeah,
now, we're definitely going to be changing the format of this show in episode 501. All right? It's not going to be a huge change. I think that you guys will like the changes that we're making. I'm still working on exactly what those changes are going to be. And and I think many of your favorite parts about the show aren't going to change. So don't think of this as Dice Tower 3.0. It's more of Dice Tower, well, actually, I think we're already on Dice Tower 3.0.
Yeah.
So don't think of this as Dice Tower 4.0. Think of it as Dice Tower 3.5.
Sure.
Unless you hate it, Dungeons & Dragons 3.5, then don't think that. But we do want to make these changes. I want to work harder at in continuing to improve audio, and we want to make the live streaming things that we do at events better. I also want to be able to keep all the employees and keep us doing what we can do as best as we can. I want to get a Dice Tower headquarters. We need to get offices. We need to move out of my home at some point because we're honestly outgrowing it.
I've been there. He's right.
And I have a decent-sized house, but, I mean, anyone's house is going to eventually become too big too small for what they're doing.
Right. Well, yeah, I work at home, too, but I don't try and squeeze 4 people into this room.
Now, the biggest change that we're making with our fundraiser this year is we moved to Indiegogo. Now, I get a lot of questions as to why make this change, because Kickstarter definitely has a much more well-known name and a wider reach than Indiegogo. But we moved to Indiegogo for several reasons. Number one is because Indiegogo treats me like a human being. They communicate with me. They talk to me. They're working with me each step of the way. That's a big deal to me. The number 2 reason is we think it's going to help you guys out more because you can go in and do pledges, and then when you're done, you can go through and pledge again. So every year we have people who want to pledge for multiple rewards, and this is an easier way to do it. You might have to go through the checkout process multiple times, but once you do it, it's done, it's set up. We don't need to send you a survey when it's over. As soon as you pledge, boom, you're in the system. Easy enough.
So you're saying that if you wanted to pledge for one of the promo packs and get a dice tower, you don't have to do that crazy add-on thing where you add money to your pledge and then you have to write an email later on saying this is what I did and this is why I did it. You can pledge for the promo pack, complete that process, and then pledge for the dice tower as a separate action. Right.
And we're hoping that next year in 2018, you'll be able to do it all at one time. Just go through and say, I want this, and this, and check out. But that functionality is not yet in Indiegogo, but should be within a year.
Ah, cool.
Also, you can use PayPal for Indiegogo, which is a big deal. A lot of people use PayPal, especially overseas, for these different transactions. So we think that that's pretty handy. And then there's some other behind-the-scenes type things, structure-wise. And also, we want as much of your money as possible to go to supporting the Dice Tower. And simply put, Indiegogo is going to take less of a cut of it than Kickstarter did. Mm-hmm. And that's also another thing for us to look at. So money. You know, again, I hate talking about money, but this money comes into the Dice Tower. And what do we do with it? Well, first of all, we pay our salaries. And I you know, that seems kind of weird, like I'm eating dinner and it's thanks to you guys. But that's just the facts of life, right? We need to pay the people who work for the Dice Tower. Some of the money does go to Indiegogo for us using their software and stuff. Some of the money goes to the supplies. You know, if people we're sending out dice towers and play mats and bags and things, some of the money goes to the cost for those. We need money for the equipment. Each year we upgrade something in our equipment. This year we're going to be adding more microphones and upgrading the computers to better and faster. I'm also getting another graphics computer so that we can have some other video editors help us out on along the way. And there's a lot of other expenses, travel expenses, convention expenses, and these expenses add up quite a bit. When you see the money that comes in for Indiegogo, this is not Tom Vassell sitting on a pile of money. In fact, I try to keep my salary as low as I possibly can because I'm not in this to make money. Anytime I get some extra money, I want to give it out to other people, bring in more stuff. And while I don't believe that I need to tell you what my salary is out of that money, I'll tell you that my personal salary in 2016 was lower than it was in 2015 because we hired another employee and things like that. And I want to spread that to other people. Again, I'm not in this to make money, but we do want to be able to do it without me having to go get other jobs to make ends meet.
Right.
The Dice Tower has always been free. It doesn't cost anything to download our episodes. It doesn't cost anything to watch our videos. We do not mean to make it that way, like, oh, you know, backers have a secret podcast that only they can listen to. And I'm not criticizing people who do that. That's fine, but I don't want to do that. I want our stuff to always be free. So if you're listening to this, I am not trying to guilt you into giving money you cannot afford. If you cannot afford to back the Dice Tower, then don't do it, right? Pay for things you need. Pay for your own family or your own needs that you might have. But if you can afford it and you think that we provide a service, this is your chance to get involved. And if you go to the Indiegogo website, which, by the way, if you're wondering where it is, we'll have a link in the show notes here. We'll have a link on our website. We'll have a link in Twitter. We'll have links everywhere, okay? If you miss it, I don't know what else we can do. We're going to put links all over the place. But if you can help by supporting it, that would be great. You can go there. There's all sorts of pledges. Now, the best pledge, by a mile, is people who just support it and ask for no rewards. That's amazing. And for those people, we thank you from the bottom of our heart. But you know what? There's cool stuff there too, okay? We're not going to argue that. We got promos. I believe we have over 50 cool promos for games. Even Eric is in this one. Eric Summoner. He's a bad guy, because of course, for Zombicide Black Plague. And you played Zombicide Black Plague, and you know how bad those summoners are.
Yeah, am I tough to kill?
You're like a moving portal. See, when a summoner comes, there's a portal that they bring with them, and that portal out, the zombies pour out of that portal. But when you move, they come out from wherever you are.
Okay.
So if you showed up on the board, you would be my number one target to kill. And you know why? Because it's called Eric's Summoner, not because of the special ability. All right, just wanted to clarify on that.
Yes, I get it.
So anyway, folks, we're going to run this throughout the month of January. All right, I don't want to run this all year round. And you know what? I know we spent a lot of time here talking about it on this podcast, but I'm not going to do that every podcast. We're going to certainly mention it for all the podcasts in January, and we're going to mention all we want, but I don't want to continue to go over these points and stuff. It is up to you guys to decide if you want to help or not. Now, if you can't support us, or even if you can support us financially, I would like you to spread the word. Tweet this out. Put it on a blog. Tell your friends. Tell people as much as you can. We really need to point people to where the link is. We need to tell people. And just keep watching our show and listening to our show. That's also very helpful. It's exciting for us what we can do. We have some really cool things. We're going to be announcing soon, in a couple weeks, most of the conventions that we'll be going to over the course of this year, because we have some of them worked out. We do need to see how our fundraising goes to make sure we have money to go to all the conventions.
Sure we can get to some of them, yeah.
So I would say tune back in 2 episodes, and we'll be able to give you more information on that. Other things that are happening, we're going to be doing a live streaming event, which is coming up on January 12th and 13th. 30 hours of gaming. We're going to try something new there. And there's some other things and tricks that we'll have up our sleeve and things that are coming out over the course of this year. So just stay tuned for all that. So there's a lot of exciting things coming up. And that is all I have to say about the fundraiser. But thank you guys for backing us in previous years, and we hope that we can continue this sort of relationship for this year and the years after that. On another not unrelated note, but a side note, I've started something new called Dice Tower Chat using a program called Slack. If you've never heard of Slack, Slack is an amazing program that a lot of businesses use, and one of those businesses is the Dice Tower. We use it internally. It's a great tool to communicate with people. You can put people in groups. It's essentially very similar to the old IRC chat rooms, if you've ever been part of those. But it has more power to it. There's you can put pictures in it, movies in it, links in it, and all sorts of things. So we started just a fun Dice Tower chat. So it's like a Slack group. As of us recording this, I want to say there's just shy of 300 members.
Wow.
And so you can just pop in. I've split it into different channels, and we're going to do something with this maybe in this show even.
Really?
Well, we'll see. I have an idea. But anyway, so you can ask questions. I'll be popping in and out of there, and maybe some of the other guys at Dice Tower will pop in and out. I can't promise I'll always be there. It is sitting open on my computer usually, and you can also have it on your phone and stuff. But if you just want to go in and ask questions about board games and get like an instant response, it is a decent place to do so. And I put up places to trade with other people, to tell people about a good board game deal you found, maybe even find other people to play online games with and things like that.
Wow. So
we'll have to wait and see. But if you want to be part of this, well, you need to get an invitation. That's not hard. Email us at dicetower@gmail.com and say something effective. I want to be part of Slack, and you shall.
Okay.
Whew, those are all my announcements.
So we did want to correct a couple of things we talked about in the last couple of episodes. There was a subject that came up regarding the artist for Scythe, and Tom piped up and said, "Oh, but that's all just reused art," as we were talking about it, and we actually got a...
Whoa, way to throw me under the rails.
I didn't agree with you. I said, "Oh, really? Please tell me more." And I didn't go and fact check it, which I guess I should have done as I was editing to make sure that what Tom was talking about was true or false. And I didn't. I just let him ramble on. It turns out that the artist for Scythe, although he did create some pieces of art that had been already pre-existing for the game, it was something like 100 new pieces that he made for Scythe. And so most of it is new material for the game itself. They actually expanded the world that the artist had created and made that the theme of the game, which is kind of an interesting story. So a little of this, a little of that, but certainly much more new stuff than old in Scythe. So just wanted to correct.
That's pretty cool, too. I did not know that. That really increases my opinion of that artwork even more so. I mean, I already thought the artwork was fantastic. And one of those Scythe promo cards is on our fundraiser. Just as a
way to bring it back. Yeah, very nice. I also need to apologize because I was talking about the No Siesta dice game, and a number of kind listeners on Twitter told me I was mispronouncing La Granja. I kept saying La Granja, and I'm sorry. I am bad at Spanish. But it's La Granja.
As a slight heads up, folks, I'm never going to have a apology for pronunciations on this show because it would take 10 minutes every episode.
I'm deeply
the previous
sorry.
Episode.
I feel terrible.
Eric is just perfect at that sort of thing. He doesn't make the mistakes. You guys are just going to have to expect it from me. And sometimes I even do it on purpose.
I'm used to being able to fix these mistakes. Later, I get to do pickups in the books, and then I just correct it, and you never know there was a problem. But I don't
dirty
get to do
truth behind audiobooks.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get to some games played. This is enough of that bookkeeping stuff. People are here to hear about games, Eric.
Indeed. So let's begin with a game called Motion Pictures, Movies Out of Cardboard. I picked this up at Essen, primarily on the art design. This is a game about making movies and television and advertisements and stuff, and it's a game about hand management and a little bit of deck building. But it's a little weird. Let me get to it. Each round, and there's several rounds in the game, has a bunch of projects on the table, and they sort of border your play space. So there will be some projects that I would be sharing with the person to my left, and then some projects I'm sharing with the person to my right, and I can play cards from my hand in certain categories to complete these projects, and some projects are more complex than others. And these project cards are literal artistic depictions of popular movies and television shows.
I'm looking at these right now. This is pretty close to copyright infringement, I think, maybe.
This is one of the reasons why I picked it up, because I said this is never making it to the United States, because it would not. There's a certain amount of leeway when you're talking about parody stuff, but this is not parody. This is a direct depiction of Star Wars, Doctor Who, Star Trek. It's all there.
It's pretty good artwork, though.
It's nice. I said I had to get it now because this is not going to exist in the United States. Anyway, so you've got all these projects and you're playing cards to the sides. You can also trade in your cards, sort of burn one of these basic cards to grab a more advanced card from a display of, 3 or 4 of them that are out there, which make your cards more powerful. But you don't draw cards very easily in this game. You can maybe spend them all and get some back due to some actions, but usually, pretty much, you're going to spend your 6 cards, and that's going to end the round for you. The round also ends when you use one of these projects. Once you've completed a project, it goes into your score pile, and then it gets replaced. But these stacks for each era of the game are pretty small, and they will move pretty quickly into being diminished. And once that stack is gone, then the round ends and you clear everything and sort of reset for the next go. There's also one big master project, they call it the Trilogy, that you can play cards to that's an end game scoring sort of thing. That's pretty much it. You repeat 3 or 4 times, and you're playing cards out to these projects and trying to score points and steal them from your next door neighbors because they're playing cards to those projects as well. But you don't have that much cycling of your deck, and it felt sort of stilted. As I wanted to do the deck building thing of increasing my deck and doing all this stuff and getting my good cards to cycle through, but you don't get to draw, which just felt really odd. I had fun with it, but it felt so counterintuitive that I didn't really enjoy it. I felt like the rounds moved too quickly. They were over too quickly. I didn't get to build enough. And then before I knew it, those rounds were over and I didn't get to complete the projects I was working on. And then the fun of seeing all of these projects go didn't really overcome that weird feeling of the structure of the game. I can't really recommend it. I liked the style, I liked the art, but that wasn't enough to make me like the game. That's motion pictures, movies out of cardboard.
What would be your rating? Give this a numerical rating.
This is probably a 5. It's not terrible, but
Which is like a 2 for everybody else.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're talking classic games when you get into the 3s and 4s for me. Yeah, this is a 5.
All right. So I sent Eric a text this week, and then he called me mean.
I did, and it was mean.
I was just asking you an honest question. I said something to the effect of, how's Merchants of Venus doing, or something like that.
And it was a picture of the latest Cosmic Encounter expansion, essentially saying, oh, I see, I have the latest, what is this, expansion number 8? It's what, the 4th expansion?
No, it is the 6th expansion.
The 6th expansion. And yes, Merchant of Venus does not have any expansions from the Fantasy Flight reprint. I know, I get it. It's fine. And it was mean. Anyway, please, tell us about this latest expansion of Cosmic Encounter.
Well, actually, I honestly thought Cosmic Encounter was done. You know, I didn't think they were going to do more, but the designers are still like really pushing the game. This expansion adds 30 more aliens, bringing the total number of aliens to Cosmic Encounter down to 195, which is slightly insane. Okay, there's a lot. So essentially what this expansion does is, I think this is like the expert expansion of Cosmic Encounter to some degree, especially from the alien perspective. A lot of these aliens have little sets of cards that come with them. They're called essence cards. And so it's like a little deck of cards that you have that do something. Now, these cards can do some hilarious stuff. Like there's the nanny. And she can, warn a player, don't do this. If the player does it, she can put that player in timeout. In which they cannot talk to other players or do anything, really, until they get out of timeout. There's a sheriff who can give tickets out to people for breaking different violations. There's a nightmare who can give cards to players that are bad dreams that will cause them problems. There's the moocher who can show up in your section of the universe, and if you don't let him help you, he might bring a couch and just settle in on that. So the theming of these is really funny. Some of them are just really, I love the hilarity. Like there's one called the Klutz, where you can just like pick up someone else's ship and then drop it and then it dies. Right? So that sort of thing is funny and it's really cool. But most of these powers are also more complex powers. There's more going on in them. Most of them, not all of them, there's a few I would give to new players of the game, but most of them I would not. Mm-hmm. So that's fine. I mean, I don't mind that they're making that kind of expansion at this point. You don't need to get this, but for someone like me, it's great. These are a lot of fun powers. There's actually 2 new ones that I actively dislike, but for the most part, I like, 2 out of 30. So that's okay. The other 28 are great. The other thing that this does, which I like a lot, is it introduces alliance dials. And these are when you ask people, are you going to help the attacker or help the defender in Cosmic Encounter? Instead of people announcing it in order who they're going to help, everyone just picks on a dial at the same time who they're helping and then reveals those dials, and that's where you go. That speeds that part of the game up a lot, and it adds some nice, who am I going to help this time type thing. That's really cool, and that's like the best reason to get this expansion there, other than the new aliens. Okay. And that's pretty much everything in this. I like it a lot. It's probably not my favorite expansion. But it's a solid one. It's like hey, do you like Cosmic Encounter? You want to go deeper? That's what this one feels like. I really like that the aliens have that fun, thematic flavor to them. There's an assistant who helps you do things, but it helps them out just as much as you. But just the things like the moocher, that cracks me up. It's like this guy, there's an anarchist who, they start adding new rules to the game that make the game just go insane, and if they add too many rules to the game, they win. So that sort of thing is fun, but just realize you're getting into Cosmic Encounter Advanced almost.
Yeah.
That's Cosmic Eons, which I believe is named because the original company to publish Cosmic Encounter was Eon.
Yes.
Publishing.
It's come full circle.
It has.
But that circle may branch off again.
Now I want to say, this is probably the last expansion for Cosmic Encounter. I really don't think they can add too much more, but what do I know? There's probably another one on the way. So that's Cosmic Eons.
Next up for me is a game called Trick of the Rails. This originally came out in 2011, almost appropriate for this episode, but it has recently been reprinted in a second edition that was kickstarted at a pretty cheap price. This is a card-based train stock game that is a combination of a trick-taking card game and a stock game, like, say, Union Pacific. Interesting. So players alternate between, like...
Quick question, Eric. Are you talking about the new published version of this or the original Japanese version?
The recent new one.
Okay, just checking.
So you've got some rounds that you'll all of these sort of work as a trick-taking card game. High card wins. And there is a prize. You have like a row of prizes along the side. So one round may be this is worth a stock certificate, a nice one for one of the colors. And then others will, let's talk about the stock certificates first. Everyone plays a card, and the winner of the trick is going to get that prize in front of them. Everybody else is going to get the card that they played as the trying to win the trick in front of them as a stock certificate. Then you alternate into a different round that adds trains to these rows of the different colors. And the longer the trains are, the more colors are played on that section of the board, the more that the train line will be worth. But there's also cards like engine cards that get added to those columns, and that determines how many of the cards in the train row are actually going to be counted for scoring. And there's also costs associated with those cards. So you can take one of these things and give a big negative to one of the rows of cards that you don't have stocks in and make it, sort of tank its economy and make it not worth nearly as much. Or give a really good cluster to your favored stock. It's very counterintuitive, but I said that about the last game I talked about, but in a good way. There's some tricky decisions to be made because there are only so many cards in a particular suit, in a particular color. And you may be trying to get the yellow trains to really be worth something, but the really high value cards are also possibly very powerful cards for winning tricks. And you may want to hang on to them to be able to win tricks, to sort of control the flow of the game and get those prize cards. However, you spend too many of those to win tricks, and you're not making that train line very valuable on that side of the board. So you have to really play the balance very carefully in this game. And I found that to be delicious in its simplicity and complexity. It's not that difficult to understand how the game works. But getting good at playing that balance is very tricky. And we immediately played this again after learning it. We went through one round and said, okay, I think I know what I should have done. And it plays so quickly. I mean, it was maybe a 30, 45-minute game. We played so fast that we were very easily able to reset and do it again. And still don't think I have a tremendous handle on it, but I got closer. There's a lot to play with in this little box, and based on the number of players, I think there are even some more variants in the box that you can change up those scoring cards, those prize cards, and get different rewards. There are different city cards that get mixed in there that provide different bonuses. There's a lot to play with in this box, and I really enjoyed Trick of the Rails.
Yeah, I don't know that I played the original version. I don't remember it having all that extra stuff. But I do agree with you that it's somewhat counterintuitive, but there's really a pretty good game in there. Yeah. I don't think it's for everyone, though. Would you agree on that? It's not like for some people, I'm like, yeah, you know what? You're going to just not have fun with this game because you're constantly trying to outthink yourself in some degree.
Quite possibly. And it's probably not one that I'd bring out, even though it is a trick-taking game. I would hesitate to bring this out at, like, Family Game Day.
Whoa. There's a lot of games we talk about that I would hesitate to bring out at Family Game Day.
It's true. I mean, but usually if it comes in a small box like that, it's like, yeah, I'd probably do that. But I think this is a little too tricky. There's to bring out for a Family Game Day. This is much more of a gamer's trick-taking game. But it's not that bad, and it plays so fast. You're going to want to redeal it, and play it again. Thumbs up. Trick of the Rails.
All right. I'm going to talk here about half of a game. That's because the game I'm talking about is called Days of Ire, Budapest 1956. And there's two ways to play the game. One is a cooperative way, and the other is competitive. I have not yet played the competitive version, which from what I understand, is almost like a light version of Twilight Struggle.
Oh.
This game is talking about the Hungarian uprising of 1956, where they kind of revolted against the government. It was kind of a leaderless revolution, but it was the first major threat to Soviet control that had happened from those countries in that bloc. And there was just a lot of problems. It was a big mess, really, of a revolution. But this takes place in that, and so in the cooperative game, you are trying to calm down some of this stuff. Like there's just problems. There's the Soviet tanks moving around, and there's army moving in, and then there's, you have some revolutionists, and they're going around. You're just trying to stop problems from occurring all over the place. So it's a little, I don't want to say it's like Pandemic, because that's too simple. I don't want to simplify it to that degree, but there was a bit feelings like that. There's just like problems that pop up. And when the game's over, you need to have a certain number of problems or less on the table. There's no way you're going to get rid of all of them. That's impossible. So you're moving around, and you're trying to avoid there's snipers, and your character's moving around, and you personally don't want to die. You can take hits and things in this game, wounds, but you also can pick up people along the way. You're activating different people who have special abilities, and then going along and accomplishing missions with cards that you have in your hand. And there's really just a lot of, there's a pile of different actions you can take with these cards. So you have to decide what's the most effective thing to do. I can go to this location and accomplish this mission, which gives a pretty good reward for accomplishing that mission. But then the enemy troops and snipers are going to come in after me, and that's going to kill a couple of the people who I have traveling with me. And is their sacrifice worth it? So it's very intriguing. It was not intuitive for a while. And then after a while, we're like, oh, okay, now everything's coming together. You're trying to figure out what to do as you move around the city of Budapest. So it was good. It was a solid, really good game, and I liked it a lot. But I suspect I might like the competitive game better. The only thing is, I'm wondering, I haven't read through all the rules of the competitive game yet. I'm wondering, they must tone down the player who's playing the government, because it was hard for us to beat them as a cooperative game, right?
Right, yeah.
So they must tone it down somehow. How they do it, I don't know. There's like whole decks of cards I haven't used. So I'm still curious, but I love the historical theming of this game. So that is Days of Ire, Budapest 1956.
It's funny how, your gaming life can change very, very quickly. You may go to a convention and not know what you're doing for an hour or two, and then somebody like Jason Levine comes careening around a corner and saying, "Hey, what are you doing right now?" Well, I was going to walk around the exhibit hall. Come with me right now. Okay. And you get dragged into a small room where you get shown the Munchkin collectible card game. This is not what I expected to happen, but it happened. And the Munchkin CCG is an upcoming game from Steve Jackson, and it was designed by Eric Lang and, I believe, Kevin Wilson. It does for CCGs, like Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic, what the original Munchkin game does for role-playing games. So it has a lot of humor, a lot of goofy illustrations, and that's pretty much all I thought it was going to be. But there's actually a game here. You are trying to knock out your opponent, knock down their health to 0. And your opponent and you are summoning creatures and stuff in order to defend yourself and attack each other. Makes sense. It's pretty standard fare. But there's a bluffing aspect and an economy to this game. You are leveling up each turn. So you start out at level 1, and then on your next turn you'll be level 2 all the way up to 10, I think is the maximum. And you get paid. You get a certain amount of coins based on your level. So if I'm level 3, I'm going to get 3 coins I can spend on cards that turn. When I spend a card, when I bring a card out, I bring it out face down. So there's a bluff aspect to this. And once a round, you can run away from one of the cards I put out. And you don't even see it. So you look at the 3 coins I put out on something, you're like, that's a pretty big, nasty thing. I'm running. I'm going to run this turn. And I just put that away, and you never see it, but I get my money back. And then I bring out the 3-cost creature that I was waiting to bring out, and you can't do anything about it. You now have to face it. And you have to decide who's committed to facing it, and then it flips over and you see what you have to do. And after you've been attacked by this thing, it often comes back around. It cycles back, does not get discarded. If you don't kill it, it comes back around, back into my hand on the next round, and now I've got that 3-level creature. And now, am I going to play it right away next turn? Am I going to play it later in my turn? You have to sort of figure out when I'm going to spring something on you. Plus, you don't even know what else I couldn't afford on my last turn. Now I've got 1 more coin. The interpersonal relationship is a lot more of a factor in this game than I would have assumed. And that makes it pretty interesting. It's still a CCG model. I can't speak on the economy of this game, how much is going to be in the base box and the basic decks and stuff. But there's a real game here, and one that I think is worth a look when it comes out. And I had a good time playing it. The Munchkin CCG, thumbs up from me.
I'm actually really surprised at that.
Yeah? That I liked it? Or you've played it, haven't you? Didn't you get a taste of this?
I played this way back a year ago, so I don't know how much has changed.
Mm-hmm.
I also like the humor. I'm also not a big fan of the CCG model. But I like the whole bluff. I love games of bluffing. And so the bluffing's a big deal to me. So I'm going to wait and see. I want to build my own decks, too.
Yeah.
That's always a big deal to me in these kind of games. Like, if I build my own deck, how's it going to feel? Or am I really going to be happy with the decks that come out?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure I'll jump all over this when it's released. I don't know when it's coming out.
Sometime, I think all they could tell us was sometime next year. Or this year. This year.
Yeah, one of the things about I don't write as much stuff as I used to, so that whole date thing is more difficult. You watch, I'm probably going to mislabel some episodes as the
I'm sure you've already
by.
done it. Well, no, not this year.
No, I did last year. Yeah, okay. Anywho, let me talk about Mino and Tauri. Have you seen this game, Eric?
I have not.
Okay, this one, they were demoing it at Essen, and I was like, I must get that game, because I like any game with a hilarious gimmick. Mino and Tauri are 2 aliens who are doing crop circles, and they crash land their spaceship, and all this cool stuff from their spaceship is scattered around in these mazes that they've built.
Okay.
So they need to go get this equipment. So what you get is you get a double-sided board that has 2 mazes on it. They're not really mazes. They look like mazes, but there's a lot of enclosed hedges around different areas. And you can't really get from one spot to the other. There's just a bunch of paths that are kind of closed loops on each side. And then of the 12 items, or 16 items, I forget what the number is, half of them are on one side of the board and the other half are on the other side of the board in various locations. Mm-hmm. So 2 players put this board on a stand in between them, and they put the 2 aliens. 1 alien is on each side of the board, and they're connected by magnet. So if I move my alien, Eric's is also moving around on the other side. So then we shuffle a deck of cards. We have a time limit, a timer. We flip that timer. We turn over the top card, and we need to get to that item. So we look. I'm like, oh, Eric, it's on my side of the board. Eric's like, okay, great. I'm like, okay, I need to go down. So I move the aliens down, but then there's a hedge blocking my way. And I'm like, oh, I can't move down. Eric's like, well, I can move down on my side. I'm like, oh, great. So Eric moves on his side, which moves it through the hedge on my side.
Uh-huh.
So it's legitimate to move it through the hedge on my side if Eric's moving it. And then Eric's like, oh, I'm stuck. I'm like, I need to go down more, but I can't go down. What if I move over? I move over. Eric's like, oh, now I can go down. I'm like, oh, then I can move back. And we get to the item. Like, great, turn another card over. Okay, where's that item? Let's go find that one. And you're trying to get as many items as you can within the time limit. It's really fun. And you're like, this is communication back and forth. It's a kid's game, okay? But it's really fun to work together. And I think it's really great for kids because you're forcing them to communicate with each other.
Yeah.
Like, hey, move up, move down. And it's not that hard to get to each one. So, I mean, sometimes you have to say, okay, to go down, we actually have to go up a little bit, then over, then down, then back over, right? And, I mean, you could just move it until you finally get there somehow. You know, okay, I'll move it around here. And as you're moving it, someone's like, stop, right there. Now I can move it. That's a neat idea. It's a gimmick, right? And there's 4 boards included with the game. And each board can be rotated on all 4 sides. So there's a lot of different variations to it. I really like it. It's called Mino, M-I-N-O, and Tauri, T-A-U-R-I.
Okay. I think I did hear about this. That sounds fascinating, though.
Yeah, as soon as I saw it, I was like, I must get this. But, I mean, the gimmick will get me, but the game has to be good enough to keep me. And, yes, excellent children's game. And I can see adults even playing it as a lark. Mino and Tauri.
Did you say as a LARP?
As a lark.
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, sorry.
That'd be different. I'm dressed up as an alien. Ooga, ooga.
Hello, I'm Skip Hampton, with yet another tale of betrayal. I became a board gamer back in 2012, and I was blessed enough to convert my best friends and bring them into the hobby. Sure, they prefer casual games, those that the most devoted hobbyists call gateway or next step games, but I really don't mind. Once a week, or maybe twice, I enjoy my casual gaming with my friends while I keep up with the meatier stuff during my weekly meetup. Before discovering the magnificent world of modern board games, our gaming life didn't involve RPGs or CCGs, the fields that usually gamers used to be familiar with. After our childhood games, we didn't experiment with any tabletop experiences, except for a couple of mass-market party games like Taboo or Trivial Pursuit, which I used to adore, and the occasional game of poker. Once every couple of months, while in college, my buddies and I enjoyed a poker night. I have a pretty good poker face, whether it's Texas Hold'em or Sheriff of Nottingham, until that one night. After a couple of hours, I saw luck smiling at me. I was dealt 2 aces. I bid carefully, and I gladly saw everyone calling. The flop revealed another ace. I bid again, and 3 out of the 5 people at the table called. I couldn't keep my poker face any longer. A big smile was on my face, and my hands were trembling. I was sweating. How could this happen? The turn revealed the 4th ace. 4 of a kind. No way! I bid strongly to take the pot, but in my surprise, everyone raised my bet. I ended up announcing all in, and everyone called. That was it. I won. Or so I thought. I showed my aces with a lame smirk. See and weep, I said. Everyone was laughing. But why? It turned out that right before that hand, when I left the table to refill the snack bowls, one of my friends, you guessed it, we'll call him Bob, went through the card pile, dealt me 2 aces and added 2 in the common cards. I was played. From then on, whether it's poker or 7 Wonders, I demand to see the cards shuffled while I'm present. Okay, bye.
That's hilarious.
Oh, my goodness. They let him keep the pot, right?
Well, that's what I'm reading through this backwards because I was like, were they actually betting real money on it? I can't tell. Maybe it was his birthday?
Maybe.
At least, here's the thing. I feel like they weren't too mean about this because the fact is they told him instantly.
Right.
Being mean, they would have waited for like a year. Then one day when he was bragging, they'd be like, by the way.
Yeah, we've had tales like that where the guy has gone like a year without realizing.
I've had such things happen to me. Huh. So I'm just saying that could be mean. That could be hurtful.
I had nothing to do with that.
I believe we have records to show the opposite.
I don't know what you're talking about. Let's move on.
Top 10?
It's a Dice Tower Top 10!
The Dice Tower's Top 10 list is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.
okay, I'm really excited about this. It's always fun for me to go back 5 years and, talk about these games that came out because we're looking at them in retrospect. Right now, there's all these big arguments. Was 2016 that great of a year or not? Blah, blah, blah. Okay,
Right.
Well, you really can't tell right afterwards. But 5 years, we got some pretty good perspective. And was 2012 the year that I was always raving about what a great year it was? Maybe that was 2013. I can't remember.
I
Remember
know
that
that
year?
we were talking about 2012 as being a very strong year.
Well, I'm going to go farther than that. I believe, after working on this top 10 list and going through these games, that 2012 is the greatest year of board gaming up to this point.
It's
I
possible.
used to say it was 2004, 2005. Those years are both very strong. But 2012 is unbelievably strong. I mean, well, I'll go more into that when we're done with our top 10s because, well, I don't want to spoil our top 10s by talking about all the games that are not in them. So, let's go.
Let's do it.
Number 10.
Let's start things off with a redesign of a game I really enjoyed in its original incarnation, but Thunderstone Advance made enough tweaks to the original game that it just became a far better version of itself. With adding some clarification of rules, adding a nice play mat, a board that made it easier to organize everything, really some neat tweaks in graphic design and play style that I appreciated it. My number 10 is Thunderstone Advance.
And I love Thunderstone Advance, and the only reason it's not on my list is because I didn't consider it different enough from Thunderstone for me. But I can see Eric's point here. I'm not giving him a hard time about this particular game, saving it up for later.
Great.
My number 10 is Smash Up. Now, 2012 was the year of several mega hits, right? Each year, there's a certain amount of games that are popular. Then there's really popular ones. I want to say that there was 5 or 6 pretty big games that came out in 2012, and that's a huge deal. And anyway, but one of them I think is Smash Up. Smash Up is easily AEG's best-selling game. They are continuing making expansions to this very day. There's expansions announced for 2017. They made a Munchkin variant of Smash Up. They've made all sorts. They made a fluffy princess kitten expansion. They've made one that parodied. I think there's like 50 different factions now for Smash Up. It's a very simple game with some complexities. It takes that genre and adds some layers to it. And it takes 2 decks and you shuffle them together. Just a really strong game. I really enjoy it. It's in my collection, and in fact, every game on my list is in my collection still. That's pretty good for a year. So Smash Up, my number 10.
Yeah, I think you can say that about all of mine except for one.
Number 9.
Anyway, number 9 for me is Würfel Bonanza. This is the Bonanza dice game, and it's really a shame this one hasn't come over in English because it is well worth tracking down. It's a dice game based on Bonanza and one that allows everyone to be paying attention and scoring on everyone's turn. Whoever's turn it is gets to make some more decisions, but based on what they roll, other players can score. So everyone's involved in every turn. It moves quickly and has an excitement to it all the time. I really, really like it. Number 9, Würfel Bonanza. I hadn't yet played this when we originally did the list.
I was like, what is Eric talking about? Würfel Bonanza. And as soon as he said dice game, I was like, wait a minute. I've played that. Z taught me this game a few years ago, again, after 2012. And Eric's right. I was mind-boggled that no one brought this to America.
It's odd.
Because it's a pretty solid game.
Right.
But
I'm sure Rio Grande probably had first refusal, and then no other publisher would want to bring it because it would be off-brand for them.
That's true. I wonder if it could be rethemed. But, All right. My number 9 game was Exodus Proxima Centauri. This was a lighter space exploration game compared to Twilight Imperium 3, which had come out almost 10 years prior to this. Wait, am I in the right year? 2012, 7 years prior. Twilight Imperium had come out, and I like Twilight Imperium, but it's like 8 hours. Exodus was a shorter version kind of that game where you were going around and you were you had different phases in the game, and I really liked the expansion that just came out for it. Then they did a second edition, which was better, and the expansion has been consistently getting better, but I like space epic type games. There's not very many of them. This one's a solid one. So my number 9, Exodus Proxima Centauri.
Yeah, I never played this one.
Unfortunately, I played your next one.
Number 8.
Number 8 for me is Copycat, the Freedom and Freeze amalgam of lots of other mechanisms that I say works pretty well. It turns into a fun, light, well, not that light, because there's deck building here, there's action selection a la Agricola, there's a action card row a la Through the Ages. It all meshes together all sorts of mechanisms, but I think it works. I don't like this as much as I did when we originally did the list. I think Copycat was my number 4 back in 2012, but it's still a really fun game and still in my collection. Copycat, my number 8.
Here's the thing. It's like, oh, Friedman Freeze copied all these games, and you play it and you're like, oh, yeah, it works, but I don't think it's a good game. It works, and I think it's forgettable, and I think that history has borne it up because it didn't even show up in the top 50 games when I was going through looking for the ones for the list. But
yeah, I still adore it.
My number 8 is another. I don't know if this one was a mega hit, but this one is certainly a very big hit of the year, and that is Lords of Waterdeep. When they announced that they were making a Dungeons and Dragons Euro game, most people kind of cocked an eyebrow and said, "Yeah, we'll see." And wow, did they see. I still see this one being played. I am consistently seeing this one played at conventions and at board game clubs. Still 5 years later, that's always a good sign of a game. It's a sign of a game that people like a lot. And it's a really excellently designed game. The Dungeons and Dragons theme is not as strong as it might be, but that's fine because the game is so good. It's a light worker placement game, getting different characters, different heroes, resources, if you will, to go out on missions. I love this game, Lords of Waterdeep.
This was shortlisted. I'm not quite as enamored by the Dungeons and Dragons connection as many people are here. It is a solid game and probably in my low teens, but just not.
Are you
one
saying that the theme actually drops it down a little for you?
Maybe. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm not. The fantasy theme doesn't really do anything for me. The one major connection with Waterdeep is that there are characters I've voiced in there. Like, hey, yeah, I did that guy in a book. That's cool.
And everyone at the table's like, shut up, Eric.
Yeah, you say that every time. Stop it. Anyway, just missed the list for me.
Number 7.
Number 7 for me is Mermies. This is the game about ants. Really nice mechanisms in here. The pheromone trails I'm just fascinated with. Also moving your ants around on your board and making that an efficient system. It really pushes all those buttons. This one has also slipped a little bit in the 5 years. Mermies was my number 2 originally, but it's still a solid game and a deep game, brain-burnery sort of game. One that you really have to work through those actions and set things in motion, knowing what they're going to do before you do them. But I still like it. Mermies was my number. See, I'm switching back and forth between both lists here. Mermies, my number 7.
I'm not even looking at my old list. I'm not sure what my games were. Number 7 for me is Libertalia. I remember when I first saw the artwork for Libertalia, I was like, ooh, that looks really good. Really cool pirate artwork. And this was the game that really turned me around on the designer, Paolo Mori. I had not necessarily liked all his games in the past, but this one was fantastic. And I think I've liked pretty much every game that he's come out with since. But Libertalia took Citadels, which Eric does not like much, but it turned it on its head for me. It basically took Citadels and it plays it in various ways. Each game felt different, but it had a very similar feel to that, and it really scales well. I really like it. It has kind of a little bit of a try to outthink everybody else. And each game you're using different pirates. Really like this game. And I assume, Eric, it's not your list because you don't like it as much as I do at all.
Yeah, no. This one, I mean, it was fun, but I'm not calling it best of the year.
Number 6.
Number 6 for me was my number 1, and I think I was maybe a little overexcited, and I've also since then separated the 2 editions of Merchant of Venus into 2 distinct games, and I'm talking now about the 2nd edition, the Fantasy Flight Standard Edition, which attempted to streamline the original game that I love so much, but in addition to streamlining it, they added a whole layer of chrome, and some of which I really like. I kind of like the dashboard on your ships and the fact that all of the cultures in the game now have some sort of technology. There are some new strategies that can be utilized, and the game gives you enough time to make those strategies work. The downside is that it's longer than the original game, and some of those changes aren't necessarily for the better. So I appreciate this design, but it is not the number 1 game of the year. It's still fun, it's still an adventure, it's still very well produced in its Fantasy Flight edition, but Merchant of Venus 2nd edition is my number 6 for the year.
My number 6 is a game that I thought Eric might pick because the first time I played this was with Eric, and that's Seasons.
Yes.
Seasons is just an amazingly cool game. It's still all these games are my collection, but it has a feel almost of Magic the Gathering with these cool card combos that you can do, but it has a mechanism I like, which is dice selection. You roll dice, you pick the die, you take the action on that die. And then you're collecting resources, using these resources to put cards out that give you these amazingly cool special abilities that combo with other cards. Just fun. And another game that scales really well from 2 to 4, Seasons.
Seasons was my number 8 in 2012. It's one that never made it into my collection. It was on a wish list for a long time, a few years, and I just never one that I pulled the trigger on for buying myself. So it just hasn't seen the playtime and has sort of fallen off the list. I agree with everything you said. It's a really neat game, and the dice mechanism is very cool. It's just not one that outside of conventions, it's not one that I was playing.
Number 5.
Number 5 is Crossmaster Arena, which did not make my list last time, I think because I hadn't yet played it. And this one has just, we've talked about it many a time on many other lists. Very exciting tutorial system, which is carried on to other editions of the game. It's something that system works very well with. The cute little figures, my kids still enjoy playing with them. Really stellar product. Crossmaster Arena, my number 5.
Yeah, man, again, this is another one of those games that's like, wow, that game came out in 2012. You may not have heard of Crossmaster Arena and played it, but it was a big thing for a while. And mostly because people wanted those pre-painted chibi figures, but still.
Sure.
My number 5 is higher on Eric's list. This is our one of 2 only crossovers between the 2 of us, and I thought this was something we were working together, but apparently Eric's going to win somehow.
Number 4.
And that's because we're talking about the semi-cooperative legendary Marvel game. The first time we both played this was with each other. We got to try this at a Gen Con right before the release of the game. This is a really fun cooperative deck-building adventure, one that has seen some resurgence in my house thanks to my kids enjoying playing it, especially my youngest, who's superhero obsessed. And I just my Secret Santa got me the Civil War set. We haven't played with it yet, but it's been integrated into the system, and I can't wait to play like with Evil Iron Man. That'll be fun. Legendary Marvel really is a blast to put together these teams, and it's still going strong, at least in my house. My number 4 and Tom's number 5.
Yeah, I agree with Eric. In fact, I still remember that first game we played, and we're playing. He's like, by the way, there's only one winner, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what? That's a dumb rule. I thought it was dumb at the very beginning, and I never play with it. We always just play straight up cooperative. In fact, I think most people I know play that way. But yeah, this game, it's had pretty good legs. I remember when we played it, I was very kind of suspicious going in because we were playing with Upper Deck. What do they know about board games, right?
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Like, really?
And they
just
sent us this invitation
cards.
That was kind of almost, it wasn't pretentious, but it was kind of like, we will allow you to come to a secret play test. And I was like, fine, we'll go.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I didn't expect anything out of it. Then we went and he sat and he started explaining it, and I was like, oh, this actually sounds pretty good.
This sounds awesome. This is really fun. Yeah.
So, yes. My number 4 is Suburbia from Bezier Games. Now, I'm going to say that this is the game I think that probably put Bezier Games on the map. Now, Bezier Games has been putting out games for years prior to this, but many of their games you probably don't know about. You know, they did that Seismic one, I think. Does anyone know that? Anyone? No.
Yeah.
But Suburbia got him some pretty good critical acclaim. It is a very fun city-building game as you place tiles out, and your tiles that you place affect other people's tiles, to the point where, again, this is a game that people are still talking about today. And that's one of the things about 2012 is many of the games in 2012 are still being played today, which I think is great 5 years later. So my number 4, Suburbia.
Number 3.
Number 3 is our sync up for this list. I always chuckle whenever we do this. Robinson Crusoe.
I'm still convinced Eric does it on purpose, but whatever.
No, I've got my list, and I'm typing them in as I go through the cells, and I've got them on like a handwritten note, and I get to one that syncs up, and I just start laughing. It's like, how did that happen? Of course it would happen. Robinson Crusoe, the cooperative game from Ignacy Cevicek that is extremely difficult, but offers so many paths because it's scenario-based, so you may have a slightly different setup, different rules, different constraints each time you play, and it forces you to sort of build your civilization differently. And you can build safely and do all of your actions, you know, so you can ensure that you survive and you succeed, but you're not going to win that way. You have to take risks. You have to choose when to spend both of your discs and spend all day building a stupid shovel so you don't hurt yourself. Because you need a shovel, but then you also need to do 12 other things. Very tricky game, but a blast, and one that creates a narrative and an experience for sure. I also love the event system that if bad things happen to you, you may not see the results of those right away. They get shuffled into the event deck, and then you die of dysentery.
I'm still surprised that no other game has copied this. That's such a brilliant thing. I love that part of the game. Eric stole everything I was going to say about the game, but hey, don't worry, folks. They're reprinting it, and I believe that reprint will hit wide distribution very soon. So get a copy of the new version. It's nicer. The rules are better. You got to admit, the 2012 rules were pretty tough.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to wade. When you're looking for something specific, it's a little tricky.
But and also better components. So yeah, love this game. Robinson Crusoe. Now that I've pulled up our old list and I'm looking on it, was Robinson Crusoe didn't even make my list back then.
It didn't make mine either, and I think it just because it may have been slow to distribute. I think copies were hard to get at the end of 2012, and it was one that I started playing for the first time in 2013.
All right, well, let's go to number 2.
Number 2.
Number 2 was my number 6 on the original list, and that's Terra Mystica, and that one has increased in my estimation through more plays, more exploration of the various characters and races and strategies that those races push you into. Every time I play this, I find it difficult to do well in Terra Mystica, but every time I play it, I love exploring it, unpacking this game. Really stellar production. Terra Mystica, my number 2.
Yeah, I hate Terra Mystica, but there's I mean, I got to give it its due. Okay, these big heavy Euro games come out all the time, and then they fall from favor very quickly. I mean, very quickly. So the rare ones that do stand out, and this one is in the top 10 games of all time at BGG, still. And people are still thrilled about it today. Even though I personally don't like this game, I certainly have to give this credit. It was easily the most popular Euro game that came out, that you have the heavier variety in 2012, and probably outshone everything in the couple years around it. My number 2 started a new company, and that was Mage Wars. I remember playing Mage Wars in 2012 at the first Dice Tower Con, and just was enamored by this whole, hey, I can look through all my cards. I don't have to have a deck. I can go through the book and pick out a card and play it.
Right.
Really great idea. Really entertaining, and also lets me chuck dice and move around and fight. And this one has they come out with Mage Wars Academy, which was a much more streamlined version. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I like that better maybe. But still, really do enjoy this game. I think it's an amazingly fun, varied game. They've released so many expansions. You could build so many different kinds of summoners and creatures and mages in this game. A lot of fun. Mage Wars.
I think this is a good parallel with our number twos, because I can certainly appreciate why Mage Wars is so popular, but it's just not my style of game at all. It never grabbed me.
And finally, number one.
Number one did not make my list in 2012 because I don't think I had a chance to play it yet. I heard the buzz. The buzz was building in 2012, and it did show up in the People's Choice list for that year. But I had not yet fallen into the rabbit hole, or I guess the mouse hole, of Mice and Mystics, the storytelling co-op game that I have talked about ad nauseum. So I'll just say it's stellar, it's still fantastic, it still shows up on the table, and I love the world that it has created, as do my kids. Mice and Mystics, my number one from 2012.
Yeah, now Mice and Mystics has to be talked about because this is another one of those games that has really done well. Plaid Hat Games got their start in Summoner Wars. Summoner Wars is an amazing game. Mm-hmm. But Mice and Mystics specifically made them a financially solvent company.
Yes.
It helped them grow in so many ways. And people don't realize this, right? They don't look at Mice and Mystics as, well, it wasn't that big of a game. No, it really was. Mm-hmm. It really did well for them. And, Eric loves it, and so many people loved it and got involved in it. And so I'm really glad for that. My number one game was, I did my number one game and then thought about the other 9, right? It's Kemet. Come on. Kemet is amazing. And incidentally, it's really interesting because when I made my list, now that Eric is doing this, I'm going back and doing it too. Kemet for me was number 5. I had put Mage Wars and Descent 2nd Edition, Exodus, at Libertalia above it. But man, Kemet has just gotten better and better and better. It's like almost the perfect game for me. It is a game in which, there's technology. There's a game that encourages attacking, fun card combat, really cool miniatures, and giant monsters that you can recruit to your side and go around and whoop up on the other people with. Oh, it's so fun. It feels like a little bit of a war game, but also a Euro game. It's a great mixture. It's the perfect hybrid game. I love it. Kemet. All right, before I talk more about the year, let's jump through our contributors. Here we go.
Hey everybody, it's the Board Game Point of View, and without a doubt, our favorite game from 2012 is Star Wars X-Wing. In a stroke of genius, Fantasy Flight took a very clever existing mechanic for intense aerial dogfighting and applied it to one of the most beloved intellectual properties on the planet. If you haven't played it yet, you have to give it a try. The barrier to entry is low, and it's one of the rare expandable games that is just as entertaining, regardless of how deep you dive into it.
Hi everybody, my name is Eric Chiu from Push Your Luck Podcast and Push Your Luck Video. And my favorite game from 2012 is Terra Mystica. Now Terra Mystica, when I first played it, it really boggles my mind. It melts my brain. There's so many things to do. There's so many different characters with different play styles. Right, you can play the game and you're not fighting, but you're kind of doing area control. And it is a lot of fun. So if you haven't tried it yet, please go and try it. It is not rated number 4 on Board Game Geek for nothing. So that's my favorite game, Terra Mystica.
Rolling Dice and Taking Names, Marty and Tony, 2012. Hard year to pick the best of. I mean, there were a ton of them, but I've got to go to the one that I dove in head first for. That would be Android Netrunner. Marty?
Android Netrunner is good, but there's one game that I still play today that's probably now my top Euro, and that is Terra Mystica. I love the multiple factions, I love the deep gameplay, and I still get it on my table to this day.
This is Roy Candy from Epic Gaming Night, and for me, it's Rex. This is the re-implementation of the Dune board game, rethemed in the Twilight Imperium universe due to licensing issues. I love the backstabbing and area control and traders and different item cards that you use like rock, paper, scissors in this bidding combat. I love the Dune board game growing up, and Rex is a great re-implementation of that. So for me, best game of 2012, Rex.
This is Brian from Cult of the Old. Hard year to choose just one, but I'm going to go with Spartacus. a game of blood and treachery. Sure, we have the dancing around the arena problem for some, but past that, I really love the game. I never even watched the show before I picked it up. I love the theme. I do love the dice mechanics in the arena. I just love the overall feel and picture of it all.
I think it's fascinating to see many of the games that were just mentioned were not mentioned by either of us in our 2 top 10s, which just goes to show how strong 2012 was. I mean, X-Wing, what a powerhouse that didn't make our list.
Well, here's the thing. X-Wing did not make our lists, but I was going to talk about X-Wing. X-Wing is by far the most powerful game that came out in 2012. Okay, again, it's one of those behind-the-scenes thing that you folks don't maybe realize, but X-Wing has for the last 5 years has outsold almost everything except Magic the Gathering, and in a few stores has rivaled that.
Wow.
X-Wing is directly responsible for how well Fantasy Flight has done in the past 5 years, for sure. Now, I'm sure they're giving a good chunk of money to Disney.
I'm sure they are.
But X-Wing just has sold great. Now, it's probably starting to dip in sales, I'm assuming, but not by that much. X-Wing is just doing phenomenal across the board, and wow. I mean, you go to conventions and you see hundreds and hundreds of people playing X-Wing.
Yeah, I'm on the cusp. I talked about my youngest enjoying Rogue One. I opened up the collection and showed him the other day, and his eyes went super wide. And I said, we can play a game with these. And he's like, okay. So, family rules. That's going to start real soon.
Cool. And the other big powerhouse game that came out this year, or one of the other ones, was Android Netrunner.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and that game came out at Gen Con, and we were like, oh, cool. They're redoing Richard Garfield's old Netrunner game. That's cool. They're sticking it in the Android universe, and it sold out in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And people went home and screamed that they didn't bring in enough, and they had brought in more than they had ever brought in for any other game in their history. It even outsold X-Wing at Gen Con.
Yeah.
Then it kept going strong, and they're still releasing expansion packs for today. It has an extremely active scene involved in it, and it's become a lifestyle game for many people. All right, People's Choice. Number 10, Terra Mystica, which I think is very high considering it's a game that not everyone's going to like, right? Yeah. Number 9, Smash Up. Number 8, Tokaido.
Yeah.
Again, another amazing game that came out the year. Number 7, Marvel Legendary. Number 6, Zolkin.
Yeah.
Which we have to mention this now because we're both going to get yelled at for this not being on our list. But this was another game that people played, and these designers who did Zolkin, they were pretty unknown at this point in time, and now it's like, wow, when these guys put something out, people want to play it.
Yeah, and this was very close to making my list as well. It's a stellar game.
Number 5 was Suburbia. Number 4, Seasons. Number 3, Love Letter. And here we come upon another powerhouse. At 2012 Gen Con, we ate breakfast with Todd from AEG Games, and he showed us Love Letter.
He did.
And I was mind-boggled. I was like, I can't believe a game this small does that well. Love Letter is specifically the reason the micro game genre exists right now.
Sure.
No question in my mind. Because people are like, what? This short game? And Love Letter has now been sold. There are literally 6 billion different versions.
Literally.
Maybe not. But I think is there like 20? There's a lot.
You might not be that far off. If you include all of the editions of the basic game and then all of the themed versions, it's probably in the dozen.
There's a lot of themed versions. There's Adventureland, there's Batman, there's so many. And then they did a regular one like 6 times.
Right.
The original, the classic Japanese one, the deluxe, the wedding version.
Yep.
It's like, oh man, there's so many versions of Love Letter, but it's a big deal. Number 2 is Robinson Crusoe, and number 1 is Lords of Waterdeep, which went to sweep awards that year and such.
It's true.
And again, I didn't put Descent 2nd Edition in my list because maybe I could have. Okay, if I had it would probably be number 2 or 3 on my list. But it's like a 2nd edition of a game, but it really changed Descent to a degree. It was a really big deal. Zombicide came out in 2012.
Wow.
Another game that is still just like steamrolling, and people are buying it today. The 2nd edition of War of the Ring. Coup, which is a game that not many people think of, but Coup has sold more than almost every other game we've mentioned so far. Coup is just an amazing game that people are playing all over the place. Among the Stars, Manhattan Project.
Oh, yeah.
That Minion Games, they were kind of struggling to have a really good game, honestly.
True.
And
Yeah.
Manhattan Project put them back on the map. Spartacus put what's the company that did Spartacus on the map?
That's Gale Force 9.
Gale Force 9. And Gale Force 9 hadn't really done anything of note until that point in time. And they did a game about Spartacus, Blood and Blood of the Sands or whatever it's called.
Blood
the TV
and Treachery.
Show that's it's like a really trashy TV show, right? That
Yeah.
not many people watch because it's rated super high in violence and sex and all that stuff. And they made a board game. We're like, yeah, okay. And then people started raving about it.
Mm-hmm.
Trains came out. The board game version of that. I wrote haha here, and that was for Merchants of Venus.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Okay, but you mentioned that.
Uh-huh.
Targi, which is a 2-player game that not many people talk about, but it is an amazing game. 8-Minute Empire, which even though it wasn't the only game to come out from Red Raven Games that year, their other game, which was Empires of the Void,
Yes.
came out.
Which
But
did make my
8-Minute
list in 2012.
Yes, and I really liked it too. But 8-Minute Empire is what got people noticing them, really. Because there was a lot of that coming out. Even though it wasn't 8 minutes, it was a lie, but whatever.
Right, yes.
And now when Red Raven Games has a new game come out, everyone looks at them.
Yeah.
And Freedom, the Underground Railroad, which was a really great cooperative game. I want to challenge someone to find a better year than 2012. Really. I'm not being exaggerating because this is the year that we're doing this year. I mean this episode.
Right.
But I really, when I was making this list, it just was mind-boggling how many huge games came out that year.
It was extremely strong.
We talk about 2015, Pandemic Legacy, Time Stories, Blood Rage, but I don't think it compares to 2012. Even 2004 was a pretty good year with Memoir 44, Ticket to Ride, and such, but I don't know. I'm telling you, 2012 is unbelievable.
Certainly at this distance, I think in that range, it's probably the strongest year of the...
It's easily the strongest year of the teens, for sure.
Yeah.
So, well, I'd love the discussion about that. If you guys want to go to the forums, and again, I'm not saying definitively I'm right, but definitively I am right on that one. I want to be convinced otherwise, but and I want, and when you convince me, I need you to convince me not from a personal perspective, because even for me, there might be other years where there's more games that I personally like, but I don't know that. I'd have to go back and look at all of them. But there's no question that I think that so many game-changing, industry-changing, one of them, the industry now is on a high, a huge growth, right? And I want to point at 2012 was the year that it really turned like that. All right. It sounds like I'm in love with the year 2012, so we should probably stop.
Yeah, probably.
All right, well, that's it for this episode, folks. Next episode, wow, we're gonna look ahead into 2017, 5 years in the future of. Oh wait, it's now.
It's now. We are now.
We're going back to the present. That sounds like a good name for a movie.
Sounds like a boring retread. It's like the direct to video version.
Oh, anyway, folks, until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Eric Summerer.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode, number 489, was recorded on December 28th, 2016. Coming up next week, what game are you most looking forward to in 2017? Find out what our contributor has to say. Support for this podcast comes from listeners like you. Find a link to our fundraiser at dicetower.com. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. Find out more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom and me, with production assistance from Jason Thompson, Itai Perez, Eric Matthews, and Rob Searing. Our theme was composed by Timothy Pinkham. Reminders to fix your pets are provided by Spaze Alert. and hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games at great prices at CoolStuffInc.com. We love feedback. Visit the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com. Email us at Dicetower@gmail.com or follow us on Facebook. And of course, you can find more from the Dice Tower Network, including Board Gamers Anonymous, Board Game Corner, the Push Your Luck Podcast, the Snakes Cast, Rolling Dice and Taking Names, the Geek All-Stars, and Board Game Breakfast at DicetowerNetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming.
We've got to take you back, Marty. Back to the present.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like running that fast.
The Huey Lewis in the News hit Back to Thursday.